Okay, my friends, here we go. Let's have a bit of fun with this. There's a reference photograph. Isn't that just stunning? Lovely, rich, dark colours with really bright sun up in that sky. I'm really just enjoying these paintings lately. So I think lots of, these nice summery colours, rich sunsets, and pretty similar to the one we done last week, but I think a different style, well, not a different style, a different tone, a different palette. Okay, let's see what we can do. I'll tell you what colours I have: titanium white, Naples yellow, magenta, phaylo blue, a little cadmium red, burnt umber, alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow, burnt sienna, and lamp black. I do have some dioxazine purple as well, just in case, because there's a lot of purple in this, isn't there? So I think we should be okay with the colours that we have. Anyway, I did just a very quick sketch to the outline of the waves coming in there, just very lightly. And I put some masking tape across my palette, just to give us, or my canvas rather, just to give us a nice straight edge for our sky. Now, I'm just going to leave my cat out because my cat is in the studio behind me looking to get out. So, come on, out you go. I love animals. I have 2 cats, I have a dog, and one of my cats has 2 kittens as well. So a very busy house in the Conway household. Very busy, so they're keeping me on my toes. Okay, enough chit chat, enough me chattering on and blabbering on. Let's paint. A nice blue, soft blue sky, okay, up on top. I'm going to dampen my brush. I've just a large regular flat brush, semi-synthetic. I have some turpentine with a little linseed oil as well, look, okay, just for thinning. And that's my thinners. I won't bother painting this with linseed oil because it's only a small area. I think we'll be okay. If it's a big sky, you could, if you wished, give it a very light coat of linseed oil just to help it move around. Let's take some titanium white, a little phthalo blue. A little goes a long way. You see how strong that colour is? A little goes very far, especially with phthalo blue. If you don't have phthalo blue, cobalt blue will do just fine as well, or French ultramarine as well will do just fine. Now, plenty of white into that, look, make it nice and creamy. You see what I have? It's kind of running down the palette. You see that? Nice and kind of soft and creamy, not very thick. Nice bright sky. Now I'm going to keep these colours warm, okay? So I might add a touch of crimson into that as well. So a kind of a warm blue up in the sky. Let's try this. Now it might not be strong enough, okay? I'll use this actually for the bottom half of the sky, I think. Just let's go down here. Not all the way down. As we have that colour, we might as well just use it. And as it comes up, I'm going to make it slightly richer. A little touch more phthalo blue, little touch more crimson. The crimson just warming it slightly, okay? Let's just put this across the top. Soften that down. Come on, let's have a bit of fun with this painting. I love these colours. They're just lovely colours to work with. I'm going to make it even more stronger and warmer. Let's try some magenta in this for a change. I think magenta is just a fabulous colour for these kinds of paintings, for sunsets in general, because it just adds a beautiful warmth, soft kind of a warmth to your painting. I really love magenta lately. I go through phases of using a certain colour a lot. I don't know if you're like that, but there are sometimes, it could be a period of months where I would use one particular colour a lot in my paintings, and then I kind of move on to a different type of a colour. It depends on what I'm painting really, but for me now, at the moment, magenta is just such a wonderful colour. So I'm going to stick with it for now. Okay, I'm cleaning my brush. And as it comes down, I'm going to start really warming this. I see a lot of cadmium red in there, little white. And as it comes down, I'm going to start warming the sky, okay? You can see we have this lovely warmth. And also, you can see how I'm not mixing a huge amount of colour. they're kind of very dry mixes. I'm dragging them right across the canvas. I'm not putting on tons and tons of colour because you really don't need to. If you put on tons and loads of colour, it's going to get very messy, the canvas. It's going to get very messy and it's going to be very difficult for you to control your layers as you're going. So look, I'm just using tiny amounts of colour, just tiny amounts. Little touch of magenta in there as it comes up, softening it upwards just ever so slightly. And you may have trouble now seeing this on camera because of the lighting in the studio is very bright, but I hope you can see it. Okay, coming down, I'm going to just dip my brush in some turpentine and it's soaking. Look, I'm going to just dry it on some tissue, get off that colour. Get most of that colour off your brush if you can. And I'm going to put a nice rich kind of an orange down at the bottom here. Some cadmium red. So slightly thicker now because a thicker layer will cover much better, okay? And I'm going to take a hint of magenta as well. And I'm going to put this wonderful kind of a pinky colour just down along the bottom. I'm leaving the middle just lightly, okay? And I'm going to soften it upwards, across. I'm going to take a hint more cadmium red. And I'm going to put that nice cadmium red just up there, look. Softening it very gently. You see the way we have this kind of patch of pinky colour just in the centre here, well just off centre. I'm going to soften that across. Okay. Rightio. I think I'll move to a different brush. Let's go slightly smaller with our brush. Go to small, little flat look. It doesn't have to be a perfectly flat brush. If it's kind of slightly worn, all the better. You don't need expensive equipment and brushes to be able to paint a nice landscape. That's what I learned a very long time ago when I was starting out. Because when I was starting to paint, I never had a lot of money to buy fancy supplies. So I always used cheap materials and I got the most for my money. I always learned to get the most for every penny. So it's just become a habit, really. You don't need expensive brushes and all that kind of thing to paint a good landscape, okay? Only just buy what you can afford and make them work for you. That's the trick I find. Now I took some crimson with some cadmium yellow. I'm going for a very orangey, already orangey kind of a colour. I'm going to pop that in there, right across, and leave it soften up. Now I'll add a little cadmium red to this, going slightly redder. Now when I'm painting sunsets like this, I tend to put in kind of the darker colours first and I work up into my lights. Does that make sense? So rather than putting a very bright yellow in first and working around that, I put in my darker colours and I brighten them little by little as I go. So for example, now I'm going to take some cadmium yellow, almost on its own, just mixing into that last mix we had. Even a touch of crimson, look, tiny touch. And it's very thick paint. Look, there's no thinners, it's just pure thick paint. I'm going to just start putting cadmium yellow with that colour in there. I'm going to soften it across and even leave it flick outwards. Like that. Now, because we're going up into this pinky bluey kind of a colour, I'm going to start adding a little more crimson into this mix, so making it slightly more kind of a reddy orange hue, all right? And that'll then mix much easier when we start going up into these colours above. I'm just giving a little wiggle here and there, look. Now I'm even going to take more crimson with a hint of Naples yellow. And you can see now that I'm mixing all of this in the same mix, okay? So now we've more of a pinky colour, you see that? dragging it very gently across the canvas, you see? Very, very lightly. A little touch of it showing up there on one of the clouds, so I'll just pop it in like that. Okay, now let's see how we're going. We have some beautiful clouds then breaking up across the middle, don't we? So we're going to put them in just a moment. I'm just going to clean this brush, give it a good clean, get most of the yellow out of the brush. And now I'm going to start mixing these clouds, okay? So a nice plum. Let's mix a nice plum colour. Some crimson, a little phaylo blue. And we're going right dark now, really dark now, with lots of crimson in this, okay? It's a very reddy purple, okay? Very reddy kind of a plummy colour, like a red wine kind of a colour. I do love a glass of red wine from time to time. So that kind of a colour. I know my wine. Okay, nice reddy plum, here we go. Let's just dab that in here. Being very rough again with the brush. Look, letting the brush dance around. And I'm not trying to copy this exactly, okay? It's just a very loose impression I'm trying to get. We have another little bit over here. Look, let's just dab one or two clouds in like that. Okay, very loosely. And we've one or two down the bottom here. And okay, I'll leave this one. Let's get this nice and dark up here, okay? And you see, when you're being very loose with the brush like this, don't worry about the shape of your clouds, because we're going to soften all of this together with the blender brush. So really, honestly, don't worry about your cloud shape at this stage. I'm just going to put a bit of darker colour in there. Look, nice rich dark bluey black in there. Let's take some magenta. Now we can start adding magenta into this with some black, giving us that nice rich dark colour. A little bit on this one, little touch of it on this. Okay, couple of little flicks around here and there. Look, little flicks, little rogue clouds just popping up here and there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is soften this together, okay? Nice soft brush, look. If you don't have a soft brush, run to your wife's makeup box and just grab a brush, okay? Grab a nice soft brush. I'm sure she won't miss it. They probably have hundreds of them. So just run up and grab a brush. That's what I tend to do. And I suffer the consequences afterwards. Now, let's just soften these. Doesn't matter now if you're kind of picking up the colour and moving it around the canvas. That's absolutely fine, okay? Don't worry about that. Let's just soften these out. And you can see now we have some nice soft clouds sort of fading off into the background. This one, I start at the edge, look. Kind of softening the edge out. And then kind of working in. So that you're not pulling too much paint around on the canvas, okay? And you just give it a wipe on some tissue. Go back in and soften that. So now you can see we have a nice little dark cloud up there, don't we? Let's go down and soften, gently soften some of that out. So far so good. Next I'm going to start putting in, now we have a very nice warm cloud down here, don't we? I'm going to pop that in. Just going to clean my brush there again very quickly, to get most of the colour off. And I'm going to just basically add a lot of cadmium red into this mix here, this plum kind of a mix. So we have a very reddy pinky kind of a cloud just around here, don't we? So we're starting to go down into the sun, and that means the colours are going to start getting much warmer as they come down the canvas, okay? Just remember that when you're getting down towards the sun on a sky, the colours will start getting much warmer. So just add plenty of cadmium red into your mix. That's all you have to do. You can even add a hint of it here and there. Look, just catching the undersides of these clouds. And a little over here. And I'm then going to add, let me think, a little bit more cadmium red. I'm going to go right down here. Now I can see there's a kind of a purpley one there, but because we're working on yellow, okay, if you put a bluey purple in here, it's going to mix with this yellow and go green. Now if you're using acrylics, this is fine, okay, because acrylics dry very quickly. But if I mix a purple into this, it's going to go very green, kind of a greeny, muddy colour. So I'd always use, wherever you're painting on top of a yellow or orange, use a reddy colour, okay? Because it will go green on you, and that won't be good. Now I'm going to take some cadmium red and some of this cadmium yellow over here. As it comes across to the sun, you can see it gets very orangey here, doesn't it? Very orangey. Just soften that back. And leave it soften out. Like that, okay? I always tend to pull the bottom of the clouds across, left to right, you see? That just helps kind of soften them back off into the distance. Like that, okay? So now we're ready for our lovely rich yellow at the middle, okay? So we kind of have the cloud colour that we need for the middle already. Now clean our brush quickly again. You see, I'm just constantly just cleaning my brush in between colours. That's all I'm doing. Next, I'm going to start putting in these lovely light kind of pinky hues. You see where the sun is catching the clouds. Firstly, I'm going to just soften this. I'll just kind of soften these a little bit, okay? Again, don't worry now if you're pulling kind of dirty paint around on the canvas. Just soften it out. Clean the brush again. Go down and soften some of these. And just run it lightly across these. Look, let's just keep the shape of the clouds, but kind of soften them back into the distance a little. You see? That's all. Nice and simple. Let's mix a nice bright pinky colour. I'm going to go for cadmium red. Lots of white, Naples yellow, and a hint of cadmium yellow, just to make this sort of bright peachy colour, okay? This would be a nice bright sunlit kind of a cloud colour now. Let's just go here and just give it a dab. You can imagine the sunlight kind of hitting the bottom underneath side of these clouds, can't you? So just a little touch of it here and there, look. Clean the brush. Pop another little bit of that over here. And a little bit up here, perhaps. And even up on top, up around these clouds as well. Now, it needs to be more pinky up there because, again, we're working on a kind of a purpley colour. So a light colour hitting a purple will make it a kind of a pink. So a nice light pinky colour, look, just here and there, catching some of these clouds. Just a little around the outsides, you see? You don't have to go crazy with this, just a little touch of it here and there is more than enough. Pop a little couple of rogue ones, popping through. And even one or two up here in this blue as well, look. But I'm not going crazy with this. Okay. I'm going to gently soften these. Now this brush is a bit big for softening those. I'm going to go with a slightly smaller one. Okay, like this. It is still kind of quite hard, look, because of all the time I've used it. But I'm just going to soften ever so gently. Just kind of taking the edges off of these clouds, even just dabbing it and flicking it, look. It's really just to soften them back into some of the colour behind, that's all. And you don't have to be perfect with this. Try not to be perfect, because if you concentrate too much and you're trying to get every little brush stroke perfect, it's just going to drive you crazy, it really is. Just have fun and try and just get nice lights up in your sky. I think that's okay for now. Okay, there. You can always come back to this later. Don't try and get it perfect the first time. That's what I'll say. All of these little things can be changed later if we don't like them. Let's take some cadmium yellow now, rich cadmium yellow, and a little touch of crimson. That will make it a very warm yellow. Let's go in here and pop this in. Letting it kind of dance between some of these clouds just a little. Okay, then I'm going to start mixing more crimson into this to make it more of an orange. A little touch of cadmium red as well. So it's now more of a nice rich orange, isn't it? And let's just add a little rich orange off to the sides of that. Okay, just dancing around. I'm also going to add a little hint of that nice warm orange up on top and leave it disappear. That will help it just kind of dissolve into that sky a little bit better. Up on top, look, just like that. Leave it just disappear off. Okay. Now we can go for some really bright colour in the centre. Let's take some cadmium yellow and some white. So I'm always leaving the really bright shades to last, okay? The really bright colours. And if you know me by now, you always know that I like to use a bit of a palette knife from time to time. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to now go to a palette knife. In fact, no, I won't. I think I'll leave the palette knife on this occasion. Let me just get some white with some cadmium yellow. Real bright whitey colour. Pop some of that in here. Flick it side to side. Like so. And even with a slightly smaller round brush, let's just take some white, pure white, okay? Small little brush. Pop a little bright white in there. That should really bring that spot to life in there, shouldn't it? Just flicking it from side to side, look. Now I'm okay with that. You see, it's not the exact same as the one we are looking at, but it's fine. I like it. I think it looks quite nice. It's slightly different and that's fine. Okay, let's peel off the masking tape and carry on down. Now we have a very dark, I don't know, is it like some land off in the distance, but I think I'll leave that out just for now. Actually, I will leave it out completely. Let's just start putting in this very dark purple, okay? I'm going to take my big brush again, back to the big brush. And I am going to make a very rich plum, okay? Again, a very rich plum. Phaylo blue and alizarin crimson. Some magenta. There's a lot of magenta in that colour down there. I can see a lot of magenta. So I want this really ready. Magenta and crimson. There. A nice rich ready kind of a plum. Now, if you have shaky hands and you really want to get a straight line, the best way to do it is to lean down with all of your brush, okay? Lean right down hard. Get your line where you want it and just slowly pull it across, look. Now I'll stop here because it gets warm. There's a lot more red over here. And then we'll start again. Get your line, push down hard and drag it slowly across. I'll take a touch of thinners just to help it move a little better, okay? There we go. Now, as it comes into the center, I'm just simply going to add a lot more crimson and a bit of cadmium red, okay? It's going to get very reddy towards the center. And that red will be a nice base color then for when I put on my kind of bright yellows and oranges later on. Now let's fill this in. I do love painting seascapes. It's really relaxing, isn't it? Such a lovely subject. Now, a little bit more red around the center, look. A little bit more red. Come right down. Bring that right out. Let's get some more magenta, little phaylo blue. Fill that in. Nice purpley colour, look at that. Lovely. I'm going to stop around there because I want to do my ocean first before I move on to these sections down here, okay? Bit more crimson over on this side. It's just a case of looking at the reference photograph, and if you can see slightly more red on one side, then simply just add a little touch of red on one side, okay? Honestly, you see, just pick up a little red and soften it through. Just like that. Okay. Now I know I can see on camera that looks almost like a black on the canvas, doesn't it? But we're going to start lightening it, okay? I'm going to get a nice flat brush. All right, nice clean flat brush. I'm going to start putting in these kind of orangey colors. I'm going to take some cadmium red and a little burnt sienna, believe it or not. And I'm going to start lightening in the center here, right where that sun is. Let's start lightening. Soften it out. Always pull from the sides outwards, okay? Again, let's try that again. Let's take some cadmium red. This time, let's take a hint of cadmium yellow. But it's more reddy, you see that? So we're not mixing any greens into this purpley colour then. Let's just pull that across there and leave a flick out. We're starting to get a little bit of a glow, aren't we? Off in the distance. I'm going to start slowly adding a little more cadmium yellow. So we're slightly lightening the shade in the center all the time, you see that? And because we're putting on these reds first, it means we're not going to end up with kind of greeny, muddy colours. So we're going on top of the red, you see. And that allows us to create this lovely glow across the top. Now I'm going to create a nice hazy effect right across the top of that. I'm going to take some cadmium yellow with a little crimson. And I'm going to create a lovely orangey hue, okay? Lovely orangey colour. I'm going to go right across the top where the sun meets the ocean. I'm going to put this nice brightness just right across there, okay? Again, clean your brush. We're not picking up dirtier colours. Soften it outwards from the edges. You can start to see now we have this nice warm glow off in the distance, don't we? And I'm then going to take some cadmium yellow with some Naples yellow, and I'm going to just pop some of that in right where they meet. There we are. Now the trick with oils, especially with this kind of a subject, is, especially when you're doing this, is not to mix it too much on the canvas, okay? You can see I'm just kind of putting on solid brush strokes and I'm just leaving them. If I keep mixing this constantly, it's going to sort of soften in to the colour underneath and start mixing and creating kind of muddy colours. Does that make sense? So now I have a nice brightness up there under the sun. Now I want to get rid of this dark line, you see that? That's really starting to annoy me now, so I want to get rid of that. I'll take some yellow and some white, and I'm going to go right across where that joins. Some yellow and white, just like that. Now, one stroke, clean your brush, and then let's soften it outwards, okay? So I'm softening this now between the two. And that's not bad. Okay, the next step is our water. And I'm just very quickly going to change my turpentine because it's all yellow. Look at that. That's not good. I'm going to just clean that with my tissue. Clean it out. Get rid of my tissue. And I'm going to get clean turpentine. Just a little drop is all you need. And some fresh tissue. This is looking good so far, isn't it? Now, just fold some tissue like that. That's fine. That's all I need. Then we can start working on the ocean. I'm going to start lightening the ocean now. So, we have a nice dark colour. I'm going to start lightening the shades. I'm going to get some crimson for my palette. And I'm going to take some crimson with some of that light blue. Let's take some white. So let's just say crimson, a little white, some phaylo blue. Going for a nice light mauve, mauvey kind of a shade, okay? And I'm just simply going to start popping some of that in. In fact, I will take a hint of magenta, sorry. Let's go for a hint of magenta. So we're going for a light pink. There we go, that's better. And I'm simply going to just flick it side to side, look, just like that. Side to side. There we go. Let's leave that disappear off into the distance very carefully. It's really just about creating an atmosphere in the painting, isn't it? This type of a painting, I just want to create a little atmosphere. A nice warm kind of a pinky seascape with some nice sunlight coming down. Now, again, picked up a little bit more, soften it in. And you see your brush doesn't have to be completely sharp for this, okay? I'm just adding a little hue, that's all, a little colour. And creating some movement in the ocean as well. That's all I'm trying to do. Side to side. And this is the very early stages again, okay? Don't be put off. Don't be thinking that this is going to be the finished product, if you will. It's by no means. A little bit of more blue in on this side. There seems to be a bit more blue over on the left hand side. And let's just bring it across, add a little touch of it over here as well. That will just help balance your painting, okay? A little touch of it, just here and there. Now as it comes to the kind of the middle, where the sun is, it's going to start getting very warm, isn't it? So I'm going to start taking cadmium red. I'll take a touch of phthalo blue, lots of cadmium red, Take some crimson as well. And it's going to start getting warmer as it gets to the middle here. I'm just flicking a little bit of it through there, okay? That's all. Just get a nice warm pinky colour on your brush and just pop it in there. Just around the middle. And that's preparing us for our highlights from the sun as well. You see? A little bit of magenta, some crimson, little Naples yellow, in fact. And I'm going to simply start lightening where the sun is coming down. Look, little kind of a light pinky shade. And all these little changes in colour will add up in the end and give us some wonderful lights and darks. Now let's go into again some Naples yellow, little pink. I have a very light peachy shade here. I'm going to start popping that across to start creating some of, you see the way some of the waves are breaking. I'm going to put a little touch of it across here. Look, that could be the light side of the wave catching. And again, you can use light blue for this as well. But I'm just going to go with pink for now. Okay. It's coming together, you see, slowly. We're adding these little shades together. It's coming together all that little bit slowly, but it is. Now, I'm going to start putting in some of the darker shades. You see the darker shades on the waves breaking? I'm going to start putting those in. I'm going to take some phaylo blue and lots of crimson, okay? Plenty of crimson in this. And a little magenta as well. A very dark purpley grape kind of colour, okay? Like a dark red grapey colour. I know it looks black on the camera, but that's cameras, isn't it? They never translate the colours perfectly, do they? Little of that colour going across here. You see that dark wave just kind of flicking across there. Putting it across, just giving it a little bit of a wiggle as you go. Simple. And again, don't overthink all of this, all right? Another little one off in the distance like that. We have a couple flicking around up there. You see the way I'm just sort of dragging my brush ever so carefully across the canvas, look. Even using just the corner of my brush here from time to time. Just to leave a tiny amount of paint on the canvas. Now let's come down and pop this really dark one in down here. Comes right across like that, doesn't it? And this one is nice and dark here, isn't it? I'm going to flick it down and outwards and let it disappear. And the same with this one above it. I'm going to kind of flick that downwards and out. Little tiny curves and drag it straight across. That will drag it down into the paint underneath and kind of create this lovely, you see that lovely soft effect? Now, moving on to this one, we have another one above here. And we can just go really make our own at this stage. But I am kind of glancing at the reference photograph every now and then. I've taken some magenta. I'm going to pop some magenta just into this one here and there. And it comes out like that and around, doesn't it? You see that? Now I'm going to take a touch of black. I always have a habit of putting far too much black on my palette. I really only use a tiny touch of it. But what I'll do then is I'll scrape this off and put them on a new palette for my next painting, which is very handy with oils. The good advantage with oils is you'll never waste your paint. The paint will stay wet for 2 or 3 days and you can always use it for something else. Whereas if I put big blobs of acrylic on this, it's going to be completely hard by tomorrow and it'll just end up in the bin. So you are using a lot of paint and acrylics unnecessarily. Now again, that just goes back to me kind of, you know, getting the most out of my paints and my brushes and stuff like that. But you get the idea. Now, okay, one more just across the top there, going right through. They're just little subtle touches, but you can see them. All right, I'm going to start putting in some highlights on some of this now, and then we'll put in our brightness from that sun, okay? I'm just going to clean my brush there first. And I'm going to start putting in some lighter shades of a blue, pinky blue. I get some phaylo blue, lots of white, and a little magenta. Again, the magenta, you see, keeping that warm shade. If you go just blue, you're going to make it very cold. So a little magenta or crimson, if you have it, just in with that mix, it just helps keep it warm, you see, nice warm violet. And I'm going to go across on top of some of these and just suggest a little bit of light catching some of them. Okay, you see? Isn't it just coming to life already? A little bit across the top of this here. And then, when I have that done, I'm going to just start adding some little flicks of brightness in between, look. And remember, we're not painting actual water. We're just creating the impression of movement. That's all we're trying to do. That's it. Just to create movement in the water so that the viewer kind of looks around and it gives you that feeling of the water moving around and lapping up and all that kind of thing. So that's really all we're trying to do. So don't try and paint a photographic copy of water. I see a lot of people on YouTube and just in general as well trying to paint something like a photograph, and really it's just, it looks like so much work. It really does. And for me, there's no enjoyment in that. I much rather create a nice impression rather than trying to make something look like a photograph. You know, if I want to make something look like a photograph, I'll just take a photograph with my camera and stick it on my wall. I know it's a huge achievement for people when they can paint something to look like a photograph, and that's very good. I take my hats off to them, I really do. But for me, there's no enjoyment in that. Okay, now a little bit more of a pinky colour going through. So we have to mix it up. We can't just put bright blues all the way through. A little bit of magenta with Naples yellow as well, look. Soften that in here and there. So we're just creating our layers, you see? Creating nice layers coming in. Now I think I'll start with my very bright colours, and then I might call this part one finished, because to be honest, it's 25 degrees outside of my studio, and my studio is made of wood. So I tell you one thing, guys, my studio is like a furnace at the moment. It really is. It's roasting hot in here. I'm baking slowly. So I'm going to take some crimson and some Naples yellow, and first I'm going to start putting that in where the sun is. You see that sun? Let's just start popping that in underneath. Left to right, and you can kind of hit and miss a little bit as well. Okay, it doesn't have to be a solid line all the way down. They can hit and miss, you see? Just like that. And again, this is just the start. This is the early start, the early beginnings of what will be our sunlight hitting the water, okay? More Naples yellow, little crimson. I'm starting first, you see, with the lighter shades, and I'm going to start adding more yellow into this as it comes down. So let's start adding yellow. Now make sure your brush is clean, because if you have any blue whatsoever in your brush, it is absolutely going to go a muddy, greeny colour. Make sure your brush is nice and clean. Let's take some cadmium yellow and some crimson. And again, I'm making this now more on the pinky side, okay? Because we're going on top of purple. Let's take some Naples yellow to lighten that. Now we can start off with a slightly darker colour, if we like. The Naples yellow is a lovely soft yellow for lightening these colours, and it doesn't affect it too much, so you can really put on thick paint. If I put a lot of white into this, it's just going to look very white and pale and chalky, whereas the Naples yellow lets you keep the colour, keeps the richness of the colour. Let's have a look. Okay, now a little bit more crimson. There we go. Okay, now as it comes up the top, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of add thicker colour up the top and drag it outwards. Like that, okay? There we go. And then let's go to our palette knife. This is where it gets interesting, lads. Well, I shouldn't say lads, really. I know a lot of people get offended when you say guys and all that kind of thing on YouTube, because we live in a PC world, don't we? So I'll say my friends, let's take some Naples yellow, alizarin crimson, and let me see now, we want to create a nice orangey colour, a little bit of cadmium yellow. Give that a quick mix now, I don't think that's half bad. A little more cadmium yellow. And let's start just creating a kind of a rough effect. I'm just sort of dragging the palette knife ever so gently, sort of here and there, okay? Just allowing the paint to just kind of flick off onto the canvas, making it look very rough. That's the idea. I'm going to come a little bit further over here with that. You see, it's just... There we go, just a little here and there. Now I go a step further. I'm going to take some crimson with some white. I'm going to pop very light pink here and there as well. Okay, there we go. Now you can even take, if you want, let's try some Naples yellow. That will just keep the yellowness of the sun as well at the same time. Just a touch, look, here and there. Going off up into the distance. So my friends, we're almost done with part one. I'm going to use a palette knife now, and I'm going to take some of this lighter colour, this lighter bluey mauve that I mixed earlier, and I'm just going to create little roughness on top of some of those waves. You see those waves overlapping? I'm just going to kind of create a little more movement on some of them. There we are. It's just to create some roughness in the ocean, that's all it is. A little bit of roughness. And there we are, my friends, part 1 is finished. I'll leave that for now. I'm looking forward to doing part 2. We can take our time with this and we can sit down, we can have a chat and we can really take our time, okay? So, I hope you've enjoyed that so far. By the way, I hope this camera is okay. My new phone, I hope it's not too, you know, yellow or whatever. I'm having a lot of trouble lately with my cameras, trying to get the right lighting in my studio. Sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's white. It's very difficult to get right. But anyway, join me very soon in part 2. We'll finish this. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do subscribe. And again, my patrons, thank you so much for your support. It's been, you know, I really appreciate it, okay? And there's also a GoFundMe account there as well. If you wish to support me and donate, please do. I want to try and save up and get some proper equipment, okay? Proper kind of dollies and stuff like that for my cameras, proper lighting, perhaps a bit of ventilation would be nice because I'm sweating. I'll see you very soon in part 2, my friends. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy. I'll see you soon.